WVOX, the local station with a national reputation.
1460 WVOX.
Oh, we ain't got a barrel of money. Maybe we're ragged and funny, but we'll travel along, singing a song side by side. Don't know what's coming tomorrow. Maybe it's trouble and sorrow, but we'll travel the road, sharing our load side by side through all kinds of weather.
And welcome to all of our listeners. You are listening to WVOX 1460 AM, and my name is Tom Sullivan. I'm happy to be here with you, and Francisco, our host, is not going to be with us this evening.
So instead, his daughter Kelly Sisco has come.
Yes.
I'm usually here, but now I'm here in spirit of my father.
Yes, Fran is not here this evening, but Kelly is here. And tonight we are going to be talking about theater. And our very special guest is John Taylor Thomas, who's going to be here talking about a new production of a play that he has written that's going to be performed this coming Saturday, actually, in Mount Vernon, New York, and he'll be talking about that momentarily. But we're going to be talking about theater, and specifically about musical theater. And I thought that we would start off this evening by playing one of the great theater songs ever written. It is from The King and I by Rodgers and Hammerstein. So let's all listen to I Have Dreamed by Frank Sinatra.
I would like to do a Richard Rodgers song for you that I believe is one of the great songs I've ever heard in my life. This is from the magnificent production The King and I. It was originally recorded with 5 dogs and 3 flutes later. I have dreamed that your arms are lovely, and I have dreamed what a joy you'll be. I have dreamed every word you'll whisper when you're close to me. How you look in the glow of evening. I have dreamed and enjoyed the view. Dreams, I've loved you so that by now I think I know what it's like to be loved by you. I will love being loved by in these dreams I've loved you so that by now I think I know what it's like to be loved by you. I will love being loved by you.
beautiful, Frank. That's
That
wonderful.
is a very nice song. I never heard that one.
That is one of the
I
great
like that rendition.
one of the great theater songs ever from Rodgers and Hammerstein.
So, Tom, let me ask you, what is your favorite musical?
What is my favorite musical? That is a very interesting question.
I have two.
Okay.
Mine is Avenue Q, because it's done very differently with puppets, and it's not your typical love story. It's a love story, but a totally different, unique one. And then The Drowsy Chaperone.
I heard about that one. I have heard about The Drowsy Chaperone.
Did you hear about Avenue Q?
No, I don't know Avenue Q.
Drowsy Chaperone, yeah, that's also one of my
I
big
do
time
know.
ones.
I do know that one. I tend to let's see. I think My Fair Lady is a truly tremendous.
You like the old
musical.
ones, yeah.
Yes, I do, and I think Guys and Dolls, which I believe we're going to be playing something from Guys and Dolls tonight. A lot of great stuff. But we started off with I Have Dreamed, which is from the King and I.
And I saw that a long time ago. When I was 10 years old, I saw that.
It's just a tremendous show. Beautiful score. Rodgers and Hammerstein. On the line with us is a gentleman who has actually written a musical play, which is about to be performed here in our area. And so we're going to be hearing from him.
The play is about...
Well, I'm going to let him talk about it. Okay. And his name is John Taylor Thomas. John, are you there, sir?
I'm there, and I wasn't expecting this wonderful Sinatra rendition of a part that I did with orchestra. I did the part of Lund Ta many years ago when I first came to New York, and I had a wonderful soprano doing the other part in that production of The King and I, and she actually went on the road with Yul Brynner the last year that he was alive. He died of I believe, lung cancer from smoking so much. So
I think
you've got me in the palm of your hand. Tom, I'd just like to say it's very good of you and WVOX to have me on your program to let people know about this free, I said free, performance of a new musical. And this is my 8th 2-hour-long musical, but we've trimmed it down a bit. It's Anne Hutchinson, which will take place this coming Saturday when it warms up, January 13th at 1:30 in the afternoon. 1:30 in the afternoon at St. Paul's Church in Mount Vernon, which is not far from Pelham and New Rochelle. Now, just interrupt me anytime. My name is John Thomas, because John Taylor Thomas, people can't remember it, but I'm known pretty well in Westchester by John Thomas and also in the city. Now, the musical has many fine local and New York singer-actors, including yourself, by the way. You're part of it. You didn't say yet.
Yes,
but I'm
yes.
going to be...
Well, I was afraid if they knew I was in it, they wouldn't show up. So
of course they're going to show up.
And
more a reason.
It's all with me accompanying on the piano, since I am a strong pianist. I am an opera and Broadway type singer. In fact, I did a number on Christmas Day. I was booked to entertain 150 people, and I did a lot of Sinatra tunes and things like that from wonderful. Parts that I've done, such as Billy Bigelow and Sid and Sorokin and Pajama Game, etc. But let's talk about this musical.
Sure.
Now, this is going to be at a famous American landmark church, so there's no charge, and it has free parking right across the street, and it's heated. So even when we rehearsed a few days ago, and it was around 5 above zero,
it was
we were
cold.
comfortable in the church.
That's true. It was.
Now, we've all driven the Hutchinson Parkway and admired the Hutchinson River, I suppose, when the weather was nice. And that was named for Anne Hutchinson. However, most of us don't realize what a fascinating and dramatic life this amazing woman led, the tragic events about her life, and what really stunned me, the fact that she and her large family, most of her large family, were killed 2 miles south of where I live in southern New Rochelle. Ooh. They were massacred by Native Americans who were basically getting back at Governor Kieft, that's Kieft, who was a very nasty Dutch governor. And in those days, which is the late 1630s, this area was all Dutch. And of course, New York was New Holland, etc. Now, the massacre, which I read about, of her and her large family was near Split Rock, only a couple mile and only a mile south of the church in Mount Vernon. And I'm going to give you the address of that twice for those people that might be enticed on that warm Saturday coming up to come over. It's, I know I have it here somewhere.
Well, I actually have the address. I believe it is 897 South Columbus Avenue in Mount Vernon. And it's really like the southern tip of Mount Vernon.
That's right.
And the lower end of Columbus Avenue. And, you know, it's funny because you mentioned Split Rock, where tragically she and her family were killed, being south of St. Paul's Church, which interestingly, that today would be the Bronx, I guess, because
the North Bronx. But remember, this is back in.
Yes, I realize the New York,
a
yes.
Dutch word,
right?
If you're into history a little bit, you pick these things up. Now, just to repeat what you said. Would you say the address? It's right near the current large Salvation Army building, where one can get wonderful clothes and furniture, etc. That's about 100 yards from that.
It's 897 South Columbus Avenue, and it's actually right near, very close to the Boston Post Road, actually.
I think it is.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That church is almost 300 years old. It was around when the famous the action that brought us freedom of speech. I can't remember the name of the trial. I think it was Peter Zenger trial. And now, Anne Hutchinson. Let me just go on a little bit before I get off on a tangent here. Mm-hmm. But a couple of years ago, I read a magazine article on Anne Hutchinson's life, which sparked my creative and musical side for several intense months. And I drove my wife crazy, working for 6 to 10 hours at a time. And I came to the New York area many years ago to follow a career in teaching piano, voice, and other instruments while pursuing a career in opera, Broadway, and oratorio music. And I'm still doing that. In fact, the last time I sang opera was a couple months ago at Scarpia in Tosca with orchestra over in Rockland County and a company there. So anyway, in writing this, I was just swept away with her story. She, first of all, came with her family from England in about 1636, and she was following a very significant minister over there in England named Reverend Cotton, and they became friends, even though she was married. There was never anything unsavory about their relationship. So she arrived over here with her family. She had 2 children that died of bubonic plague in England, and her father, who was a Reverend Marbury, was put in jail for 2 years by the Puritan movement near London, where he was. So
why was he imprisoned?
Well, why he was in prison, we have a lot of information that he basically was going against the established Puritan church. And, of course, many of the people that we call pilgrims who came to Massachusetts in 1620 and the Plymouth Rock and all that, they were coming over here for religious freedom.
Right.
And they left England for the same reason. Of course, they first went to Holland, where they eventually got help. But now get back to Anne Hutchinson and her husband. Her husband and I would estimate 10 to 12 children came over on a stormy ship during terrible storms, which we have in the musical. And we have a lot of children. In fact, in some ways, this compares to The Sound of Music with the number of children. Some of them are singing and acting. And now I wanted to get back to my background, why I wrote it. For the last 30 years, roughly, since I've been in the New York area, I've always been interested in things about strong women. So therefore, I would end up writing musicals and producing them, because I became the head of several community theaters in Westchester, most of which are now closed, and one in the Bronx. And they would do my musicals. Now, these musicals that I composed for piano and some I orchestrated and made the lyrics and the book, as we call it, include Jane Eyre, Pride and Prejudice, Oh Pioneers, Hunchback of Notre Dame,
all the good ones.
Return of the Native, and of course Anne Hutchinson. And there's another 10 or 11 smaller musicals that I've also written and produced. Now, all those have strong women in them, especially if you think about Jane Eyre and Pride and Prejudice.
Of course.
And so just stop me whenever you have a question, because I don't want to take...
No, that's quite right. This is all very interesting, and Anne Hutchinson certainly was a strong woman.
And there is a school near me named after her, right?
I don't want to give away all of the interesting details of her life and her death. But let me just tell you a couple of successes. In 2013, I had my musical Tom Jones, which is based on a racy novel from 1750.
Which was also very successful.
It was theater for the New City in New York City.
Oh, I've been there many times.
Prize-winning theater,
right?
And it earned me terrific reviews, absolutely amazing. So that was like a light telling me, well, I've got to go down this path too. After all, I've been doing opera and Broadway stuff ever since I could, sing it when I was 18 or 19. So then. The reviews were excellent, so I went ahead a year or two later and I did my Pride and Prejudice musical, which had a lot of women's parts, and it was very successful. I got a fine review from a reviewer of the Huffington Post, which I think has gained a lot of prestige, the Huffington Post. And after that, I had 2 musicals done locally on O. Henry stories at the Pelham Manor Club, which is a lovely opera house in Pelham.
I've been there. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you too many details about Anne Hutchinson, except to say that when she arrived 15 years after the Pilgrims, who were Puritans, stepped on Plymouth Rock, although we don't really know if they did that, it's only 15 years afterwards where she arrives, and she and her husband have a house built in the middle of what's now Boston. What he does is import dry goods and cloth and that sort of thing. And she goes to the local church there and starts believing her own beliefs within the Puritan compass. And I didn't write this musical to get off on a tangent about the beliefs of Puritans or other, but she started to have meetings every Sunday in her home that occasionally got to 80 people. Imagine 80 people coming at 2 o'clock after you've been in church for 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, they really had long days in church.
Mm-hmm.
And they had
also,
no television. They had, in fact, there is, in researching this, I wanted to also teach about what it was like to live 400 years ago.
Right.
And so I found this game that's included in the play called The Simpleton. The Simpleton, which is a very funny game, which we actually do in the story.
Yes.
I don't want to let you know what that's all about, or I'll spoil it. But now let me get to the most important part. About a year ago, I read of a contest for, quote, new musicals or plays.
Awesome.
And it was sponsored by a new theatrical company called Tutti Bravi Productions, which means roughly in Italian, everyone is wonderful. Now, I learned that the contest was sponsored by 2 tireless and inspiring and giving, I underline giving ladies, Miss Karen Allen and Miss Billy Tucker. Now,
I think many people here in this area know Billy Tucker very well.
Of course, yeah, I know her.
She's the director.
Absolutely, Billy Tucker.
She's on the Council of the Arts.
The New Rochelle Opera 35 years ago with the wonderful Camille Coppola, who is an opera singer herself and who directs the productions, and they do an opera each year. It's with orchestra. It's a very fine production. I've seen many of them. Now, entering my musical at the last moment in the contest, I was stunned some weeks later to learn that I was one of 3 finalists, and there was a monetary amount that went along with each prize. The other 2 writers had, well, you'll hear from them pretty soon, because they're also going to have their musicals presented by this group. The new company gave a reading of my musical at the New Rochelle Library in late September 2017. Now, that doesn't mean we were reading. That really means we sang all the music and we read the lines and whatever. And it was very successful, and we had many compliments on my work.
It's a beautiful show. It really is.
Oh, thank you. Now,
what character are you playing, Tom?
I'm
well
almost
done.
finished with this treatise here. Now, Mr. David Osborne, who is a curator of the St. Paul's Church, where we will perform this in Mount Vernon, heard from someone, I don't know from whom, though, that Anne Hutchinson had been a success, and he's very interested in Anne Hutchinson and her story. And, by the way, Alexander Hamilton and his nemesis, Aaron Burr, were both young lawyers, and they actually did cases in this church. And I'm reading a 700-page book on Hamilton right now. And there's even a cameo with a painting of Hamilton when he was 19, which is in a building adjacent to the church. But no, let me return to this one thing. When he spoke to Mrs. Tucker and myself about presenting this musical, we couldn't say no. So, as I said, St. Paul's Church, a national landmark, means that there's no charge to see the musical. There's parking directly across the street, and it's warm. In the 1700s, this church was used as a hospital for the wounded soldiers in the Battle of Pelham, which is the Revolutionary War, and there are soldiers, many German Hessian soldiers that died. They're buried behind the church, as well as Continental soldiers. So that makes it interesting. And there's an old organ in the church which needed originally a boy to pump by hand the bellows. Now, the pump is still there, but Mr. Osborne has had the organ modernized with the modern bellows, and they're also let's say concerts go on there on the organ. Last week I went to see a wonderful classical guitar recital in the church. I wanted to see what the acoustics were. Where, if you're a singer, this is a place where you want to sing because it has wonderful natural acoustics. No
amplification.
I'm almost done. You have any questions so far?
No, I've been there before. I've been to I've been to the church. I've been there one time to see a flute show, a flute and performance there. I like the seats. They have interesting seats in the church.
Well, that's the way it was done.
Yeah, it was done back then.
In fact, I was down in George Washington's area, and I also went to a church with the same. People would rent each year enough room for maybe 4 or 5 people, and like a box. And even in Jamestown, where my wife and I went 2 years ago, it was the same sort of plan. So it gives you a kind of feeling as you walk in that you're in a historical place.
Very historic, yes.
Right? And,
right.
And of course, it was also a house of worship, so it has that feel, that spiritual, that religious feel as well.
That's right. And when I wanted to say that Anne Hutchinson and her tragic yet significant life, there's a very well-worded statement on the flyer, which we're sending around and handing out to people, that it explores the odyssey of the famous Puritan rebel who was exiled and banished from the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1638 with their large family and, get this, about 150 other followers. They walked for 6 days through snow in the late winter. Now, it sounds terrible that she was banished and excommunicated, but she could have been hanged or even burned at the stake if they could prove she was an adulteress. But she was not an adulteress, even though Hawthorne, 2 centuries later, made her the prototype for Hester Prynne and the Scarlet
Letter, Nathaniel Hawthorne, sure.
Right. And Anne was a very famous midwife, and I found that fascinating. So I have a duet between her and her oldest daughter, whose name was Faith, and they are singing about how to be a midwife and the herbs and the medicines that were used at that time. And I don't think there's any other duet like that in any of the music, comedy, or musical literature. So I'm proud. So she came to settle eventually in Rhode Island, where Roger
Williams.
Say his last name?
Roger Williams, I believe.
Yes, Roger Williams.
Rhode Island.
took her in. They became friends, and she was there with her husband for 3 to 4 years. And Roger Williams had been banished and kicked out of the Massachusetts Bay Colony also. Now remember, in those days there was no separation of church and state, so that the church leaders were the ones that judged you and could even put you to death, depending on whether they could prove you were heretical or whatever. So eventually she came to settle with her family. She moved again from Rhode Island because she heard that the Massachusetts Bay Colony was coming down to take over Rhode Island and possibly imprison her again. So this third time, there's a song in this musical everybody seems to like. It's called "Where Shall I Find Rest?" And she sings it several times. And I
so
think
you wrote the
really,
music too?
That's really what her life at this point.
Did you write the music too?
I'm sorry?
You wrote the music and the story. You wrote the music too.
I wrote the music, the story, and the lyrics because
You wrote everything.
There's somebody else that did a musical on this in 2015, but it takes a lot of work to do something like this.
Of course it does. A lot of work to write plays. I wrote some, but...
Whereas when I wrote Jane Eyre, I had, of course, the dialogue to a certain extent and the story already written by Charlotte Bronte, so that's a little easier. But
well, I praise your work. I commend you for doing all this.
Well, thank you. And if you could come, one more little thing
Saturday,
I want to say.
can't.
I hope we're not going too long here. But there are many famous Americans who are proud to descend from Anne Hutchinson, including President Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yes, he is. I believe is he a direct descendant of hers, or?
I believe he is.
Yes,
I don't know on which side, whether it's the mother's or the father's side. And there's another famous actor right now, Ted Danson, who is the star of
Cheers, of course.
I heard he's
right?
how old is he now? 70-something.
Yes, he is. Yes, Ted Danson was.
He's,
he's 80, isn't he?
No, we
he's-
don't know
he's
who's going to
70
show up
years
at
old.
this. Maybe
really?
people will be signing his autographs. But it was Franklin Roosevelt and Eleanor that donated money to have this church, which had started to fall into disrepair. Before he died, he put a large amount of money aside to have the church refurbished, and now it looks like a brand new Revolutionary War church.
It
Yeah, it's a
really
beautiful
is
church.
It really is. It really is beautiful, and I urge people to come out and see it. You know, it's interesting that John, you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Certainly the music is beautiful. The story is beautiful, but it is kind of unusual. Although I know you have an opera background as well as a theater background, but I mean it's a very beautiful story. It's a very serious story, and I was thinking about how if for people who are steeped in sort of Broadway, it is somewhat dark. I was thinking about how musical theater on Broadway used to be referred to as musical comedy.
No, this is no comedy.
And this is not a comedy.
This is so serious. This is tragedy.
All I can say in terms of what you've just said, and you did it very well, there is no hip-hop dancing.
No hip-hop dancing.
No.
Tom, what character do you play?
There is a character who is a maid named Meg who does some Irish jig dancing because when you had a family of 12 people, you had to have a
Some
couple
type of
maids to
entertainment.
take care of them all, right?
Yes, no, that's true. Now, Kelly just asked me,
What?
I play a minister in the play. I play a character named Reverend Wilson.
Reverend Wilson, a
And
minister.
I'm very,
good character for you.
very pleased to be a part of this.
I can
Thank
see
you,
you
Tom.
fitting. I can see you fitting there,
And
Tom.
you're also acting as a narrator.
Yeah.
Now, Reverend Wilson was the minister, and there were many ministers at her trials, and she was much hated by them because she was also a woman's lib character 300 years early.
Well, she was a feminist.
Kind of woman
she was a feminist before there was
like
feminism.
Elizabeth Cady
Right.
Stanton when
Right.
they got the vote in 1919, and she also just had a big mouth.
Yes.
So when she was killed with her family, and there was only one little girl that survived, and that girl survived in Split Rock, which is still down there. There's a 1.5 foot wide split in the rock. The Indians later found the girl, and they adopted her rather than killing her. And that's the only change in the history that I've made, and I hope to surprise those people that come.
Now, the daughter, the one surviving child of Anne Hutchinson, I would imagine she married and had children of her own, and and I guess eventually one of her descendants was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who became the president of the United States, and they really were an incredible family, and. Anne Hutchinson was just really an inspiring person.
Well, just listening to you, I learned a little more than I knew very little about her, and now I know a little bit more with all your knowledge and your story that you just told.
Well, everybody drives on the Hutchinson River Parkway, and very few people know.
And I know the school in Eastchester is named after her.
That's true. There are a lot of things.
And there's also another school in Pelham, Illinois. No, that was the name of the Native American tribe that came, and they warned her to get out first, but then they came back and they slaughtered the family. And,
such a
eventually, there's a story about that the
Indian chief
woman that was responsible for killing her changed his name to Anne Hoke, which is an Indian pronunciation of Hutchinson. Later he had something to do with giving land to John Pell of Pelham.
Oh, okay. So it all comes together, full circle, all tied together.
I may have made some historical facts, but one thing I want to I did not write this musical to make it straight history. I want it to be entertaining. I want it to entice people of all ages, especially boys and girls, to read, to feel the history of this place, which is what started me writing the musical in the first place. And we'll see where it's going. I'm having it orchestrated right now so that at a future point, we're going to have a chamber orchestra playing it, and Mrs. Tucker, with her many abilities, has made costumes for about 20 people.
Wow, nice.
Which is quite amazing in itself.
So the show is being on Saturday at what time?
This will be Saturday at 1:30 at St. Paul's Church in
Mount Vernon.
You have the address?
Yes, it's 897, once again, 897 South Columbus Avenue in Mount Vernon. This coming Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Admission is free, and
anyone who wants to see it and see Tom in it and learn the history of Anne Hutchinson and more about her tragic but heroic life, you can go see it this Saturday at 1 o'clock.
It really is.
I couldn't have said it better than the nice lady just said, and so I want to say thank you to both of you.
Of course. My name's Kelly.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you for all your knowledge. Wonderful knowledge.
Which is my tendency.
No, John. This was really
very knowledgeable.
No, this was really very, very interesting.
Thank you, Tom.
And thank you so much for being with us. And we'd ask everybody to. It's.
Sorry, I can't make it.
It's a wonderful production. And
you're very gracious.
You've done a great
if this
job.
one turns out good, do you plan on doing it anywhere else?
Well, having done 2 shows in the city. And the Huffington Post giving a very good review, that doesn't guarantee that a show that does well in a theater, and this was a Pulitzer Prize winning theater for the new city.
Right, I've been there. Yeah, I performed there.
Oh, you have been there.
I've been there, performed there. Me and my father.
Written by Mr. Shepard, who just died. Called The Buried Child, that originated there. Sam Shepard.
Right.
Sam
Shepard. Who was in a couple of very famous...
He was a great playwright, an actor who just passed away, unfortunately.
Yeah, he just passed away. He was married to Jessica Lange, one of my favorite actresses. But the thing is, I was trying to get people... I had a couple of producers from the current musical Beautiful.
Whoa, look at it.
Who actually came, to see one of my shows... But nobody really knows what is going to click on Broadway, and with so much money to be lost, I'm just grateful people like the music and they get something out of it. I've had a very exciting and fruitful career in musicals, and I've got, as I said, anybody that wants to produce again. And 20 years ago, I started with Jane Eyre. It was a huge hit for a a community theater. It made record box office for them, and then they went out of business 3 years later. And the same thing happened with, I was the head of the Hartsdale Players for 10 years in the 90s, and in 2004, the wonderful woman Barbara Gallo, who was a wonderful director and dance teacher, her husband died of lung cancer, so that was the end of that. And the next year, my first wife, Susan Thomas, died of other, and I'm very happily remarried now to a wonderful woman who also writes plays with me.
Wow, great.
Her name is Sarah Davis Thomas. Sarah Davis Thomas, and she can't listen because right now she's a psychotherapist meeting some of her clients. So,
well, we'll have a tape.
Well, I hope
we will have a tape of
that
this
this
people will be able
play
to listen to.
intrigues so many people and makes a lot of people more knowledgeable and happy as it made you writing it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, and that's what, you know, if you have a few $100,000 or a few million and you do hip-hop, you might be able to get something off or on Broadway, but it's much harder than one would imagine. So one doesn't do creations like this to make money. One does it because it comes out
From the heart.
out of the soul and the very being of, you know, and that's
Something
where
you want to portray
I've
to
been,
others, yes.
a historian in a sense all my life since I was 9 years old, and I started a fire in the kitchen of my family home with a bow drill that I'd read about Indians 10,000 years ago.
Oh, so this was an interest for you for a long time.
To start fires, and so, you know,
this was an interest of yours for a long time coming.
So I think, yeah, I'm going on too long, but
no, not at all.
Very much appreciate.
Thanks for your knowledge, and anyone who wants to see should gladly come and see it.
I'd love to play it for my wife at a future point. So
yes,
you're welcome.
I'll see those who are interested and intrigued by this. I'll see you this coming Saturday at 1:30 at St. Paul's Church. And what was that address again, Tom?
That is, once again, that is 897 South Columbus Avenue in Mount Vernon. That's going to be at 1:30 p.m.
Thanks for being
Saturday.
on.
Thank you.
And all your knowledge and your wonderful
you even
play.
Get some punch and cookies, I understand.
Oh, good.
Wonderful. Everyone loves that. Be a great time and
say good night to
learn
both
more
of you,
about
and thank
her.
you again.
Thank you so
Anne
much,
Hutchinson,
John.
the musical.
Thank you so much, John. Great.
Thank you so much.
Good night now.
Good night. Good night.
You are listening to WVOX 1460 AM. If you'd care to call in, the number here to call is 914-636-0110. And that was John Taylor Thomas talking about his new play about Anne Hutchinson. And we're talking about theater. And we started off with a song from a great musical, The King and I. And right now, I believe we're going to play a song from another great musical, a very different type of musical, one of the great musicals ever, and that is from Guys and Dolls.
Guys and Dolls, one of your favorites.
If we're ready, we're going to hear a real showstopper. Sit down, you're rocking the boat.
Oh, good. This one's going.
Now hear testimony from Brother Nicely Johnson. Brother Nicely Johnson.
Come on, get up, you!
Well, it happened to me kind of funny, like a dream. That's it, a dream.
Well, tell us in your own words.
I dreamed last night I got on the boat to heaven, and by some chance I had brought my dice along. And there I stood, and I hollered, someone fade me. But the passengers, they knew right from wrong. For the people all said, sit down, you're rocking the boat.
People all said, sit down, you're rocking the boat.
And the devil will drag you under by the sharp lapel of your checkered coat. Sit down,
sit down, you're rocking the boat.
I sailed away on that little boat to heaven, and by some chance found a bottle in my fist. And there I stood, nicely passing out the whiskey, but the passengers were bound to resist. For the people all said, beware, you're on a heavenly trip. People all said, beware, you'll scuttle the ship. And the devil will drag you under by the fancy tie, run you in your throat. Sit down,
you're rocking the boat down.
And as I laughed at those passengers to heaven, a great big wave came and washed me overboard. hollered, someone save me. That's the moment I woke up. Thank the Lord. Thank the Lord. Thank the Lord. And I said to myself, sit down, you're rocking the boat. I said to myself, sit down, you're rocking the boat. And the devil will drag you under with a soul so heavy you'd never float. Sit down, you're rocking the boat. 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 Sit down, you're rocking the boat.
Sit down, you're rocking the boat. I like that one. That's a good song. So that was from Guys and Dolls.
That was a great song from Guys and Dolls by Frank Lesser, one of the all-time great Broadway musicals. Now, Kelly, you saw a musical recently that you wanted to talk about and maybe play something from?
Actually, it's not a musical, it's a musical movie. A lot of musicals are either musicals first and then made into movies later, or they're just movies that are movie musicals that aren't actually on Broadway or anything. But this one is popular now. It's The Greatest Showman, about P.T. Barnum, the circus, the man who brought the circus, started the circus.
Phineas T. Barnum started
circus.
Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey
closed,
Circus.
I think, 2 years ago.
Yes, Barnum
it was
and
going to
Bailey
close many times, but it lasted
it finally
did close.
It was about a year ago, and it had been around for about 150 years. Had an incredible
But about him,
run.
I liked him because he was very inclusive. He came from a very poor family, and he married a rich girl, and his wife's family didn't want him to marry her because he was so poor, and said he wasn't going to make anything of his life. But he had this passion and this dream. He wanted to make a museum, but the museum didn't survive. Then his second thing was he wanted to help people and bring people that were either different or ostracized or had uniqueness, and bring them to do their passion and live their passion out. So he was a very inclusive type of man, and he made the circus. And the song that won the Golden Globe the other night was called "This Is Me." It's an anthem for acceptance, for believing in yourself, and we're going to play it.
And Hugh Jackman, I believe, stars.
Hugh Jackman stars in it with two people from Disney Channel, Zac Efron and Zendaya. They're the stars of it. If we got the song, "This Is Me," number 2.
Okay, we're just having a little issue here. Chuck, our wonderful engineer, is resolving that, so we will be starting momentarily.
So Theaters now is The Greatest Showman. I recommend it. It is a little sad, but the music is uplifting and pulls you out of the sadness. It's a little sad because of how these people were treated, but how he made them a family, and he gave them a voice. So you'll hear that in the song, "This Is Me." Is it coming on? Well, we don't want any dead air, so if you want to call in, 636-0110. You don't have much time, but after this song, you might want to say what you like about musicals if you want, but here we go.
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. Sharpest words wanna cut me down. I'm gonna send the blood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I'm
The lyrics to that are so amazing. The lyrics are about believing in yourself. The lyrics say, "This is me. You're the now I found who I am. There is no way to hold it in. No more hiding who I want to be. This is me. I make no apologies." It's really about not letting anyone tell you can't do what you want to do, not accepting anyone else's negativity, and believing in yourself regardless of anything. And that's a great song from The Showman, The Greatest Showman, out in theaters now.
That's a wonderful song, and we encourage you to go see that.
And I think that singer, her name is Keela Settle, and I think she's going to be really big. She's all over getting a lot of credit for that song.
We're here on WVOX. We're talking about theater, and particularly musical theater. And we've been presenting a bit of an eclectic mix of music this evening. I think what I would like to do now is play something from one of the giants of American musical theater, a guy who really revolutionized American musical theater beginning in the late 1950s, and he's led a long and very successful career. And that, of course, is Stephen Sondheim. And we'd like to play from a little night music, Send in the Clowns.
Isn't it rich? Are we a pair? Me here at last on the ground, you in mid-air. Send in the clowns. Isn't it bliss? Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around, one who can't move. But where are the clowns? Send in the clowns. When I just stopped opening doors, finally knowing the one that I wanted was yours, making my entrance again with my usual flair, sure of my lines. No one is there. Don't you love fuss? My fault, I fear. I thought that you'd want what I want. Sorry, my dear, but where are the clowns? Quick, send in the clowns. Don't bother, they're here. Isn't it rich? Isn't it queer? Losing my timing this late in my career. But where are the clowns? There ought to be clowns. Well, maybe next year.
Tom, can I ask you, what is the message of that song? I think I have it, but I might have it wrong.
Well, Send in the Clowns is really a song about two people who are, and
two people who got a call.
I'm unfortunately on the radio right now, so I am unable to speak, but I will speak to you later on.
So it's about two people.
It is about two people who've been involved in a relationship, and they are coming from different places, and unfortunately, as so often happens in life, they are unable to make what they have work. Because sometimes people meet at times in their life
where
they're moving in different directions. Well, Send in the Clowns is a theatrical reference that has to do with comedy and the idea that when you get stuck, historically, when you get stuck in a situation, you send in the clowns to
change the mood, change the perspective, change the way you see things.
Exactly.
Maybe mend the relationship
and to lighten things up a little bit, and so. That is
right, like Send in the Circus, kind of to lighten things up.
Right, which
like
goes
Barnum, similar, not exactly.
Well, no, it's true.
Similar.
It goes exactly
to lighten things up and to make people laugh and smile and see things in a different light.
That is exactly the case, and we've been talking about theater this evening, and circus is certainly a form of theater, a form of entertainment.
There's a lot of different forms of
performing. Yes. Definitely, that is the case, and so we've been playing some music, and music, particularly musical theater, which is what we've been focused on tonight, is all about raising people's spirits and inspiring people, and sometimes it's in a happy way, in a comic way, or sometimes it's in a more dramatic or as you say, a tragic way, and. That's what we've been focusing on this evening. Theater is an extremely important aspect of life, and right here in the Westchester area, we're very fortunate, I think, to have people like Billy Tucker and Karen Allen and John Taylor Thomas who are promoting theater, who are promoting music. And I think what unfortunately happens now is we tend to get sort of bogged down with our with our computers and our video games and our
and social media isn't as social as we think it is, right?
No,
it's not as social.
Not
it's
at
definitely
all.
Not. It's more computerized and more, but in yourself. It's not really out there because we should be dealing with people face to face more and seeing musicals and talking about them with people and being more engaged in that because it would bring us all together.
Yes, well, social media in some ways is antisocial because it kind of distracts us and it kind of keeps
from the
people,
human interaction.
It keeps people separate from one another, and I'm not knocking it at all.
I use it a lot though, yes, but I do both. I do both.
We all kind of get very hung up on that, and there's
appreciating musicals and seeing them. If you're not a fan of them, maybe you become a fan or see some and enjoy some.
Well, live theater is a very good thing for people, and rather than being so distracted, go out and see a play and get with some other people. And certainly, we would encourage you to come see us in Anne Hutchinson this coming Saturday, and it's very important to
see Tom play a reverend.
It's very important to promote theater and the arts and to encourage people.
I love the arts,
like John.
I wish I could do more performing.
Who have given so much of their lives to promoting this very important work, which is great for the soul and great for the spirit. And so, please do come see this play or see.
Saturday at 1:30.
See whatever else might be playing around and raise your spirits a little bit.
Someday,
and
Tom.
We thank you for listening this evening.
But someday, Tom, I have a play that's not really musical, but more a play. I could have a little music in it that I wrote in high school. That's quite good, people tell me. So maybe someday you'll hear about that.
Okay, well, that's... I admire you for getting out there and doing your work and promoting your work. And we all, no matter what our talent is, we all need to get out there. And
we all have some form of talent. We all do. If you don't think we do, we do. Maybe it's buried inside, but we got to bring it out.
That is true. So go out there and sing your song or dance your dance or whatever it is you do.
And smile that smile.
And we thank you for being with us here. The program is Crisis Help on WVOX 1460 a.m. and have a great evening.
This is Crisis Help.
Side by side, side by side.
7:59 WVOX Fox News is next.